And now for our story. On a desk in the private offices of Judge Hiram Willoughby at Stanton, the county seat some miles from Wakefield, the judge's secretary noted casually an entry on tomorrow's calendar. It read, Meade versus Meade. The words meant nothing more to her than another divorce, which was to be tried the following day. But in Wakefield, there was a young man to whom the words meant a great deal. The beginning of a new life, the possible custody of his baby son. It was Bill Meade, who now was walking through the big glass doors of the Wakefield Trust and Savings Bank with his employer, David Bowman.
Well, Bill, tomorrow's the day.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that.
Don't worry about it, my boy.
So it shows in my face, does it? Well, I'll admit I've got cold feet. The more I go over it in my mind, the more it looks to me as if I haven't got a prayer.
Oh, now, you can't be so sure. My car's right here. I'll give you a lift home.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Bowman.
I'll just slide in.
Okay. All set.
You know, Bill, this Judge Willoughby is a very good man. He's been up there in Stanton for years, has an excellent reputation. He'll be reasonable and fair. You can rest assured of that.
Well, that's not what worries me, Mr. Bowman. The thing is, from what Angus McKillop tells me, well, there's only one way for these cases to go, as a rule. Well, it's not a law exactly, but just common practice for a young baby like ours to be awarded to his mother. And yet I feel I've got to show up there and make my appeal. Even if it's only one chance in 100 that I'll win.
Of course, Bill. One thing I meant to ask you, though. Suppose you did win. You know I hope you do. Have you made suitable arrangements for the care of the baby?
Oh, yeah. I was very lucky, too. There's a woman visiting with the Jorgensens, a friend of theirs from South Bend. She's agreed to come in every morning and stay until I get home from work at night.
Well, that sounds fine, Bill.
Yeah. I only wish I could hope that I'll need her.
You're going to base your claim for the child on Kit's statement to you that she wished she'd never had him, that he's just a nuisance to her. Is that it?
Yeah. You see, it's the only concrete statement I have to make. McKillop says all the other things I know about Ben Calvert, my feeling about how he'd influenced the kid and so on, well, they wouldn't amount to a hill of beans if I tried to bring them up in court. It's hard to prove statements like that, and unless you can prove them, it's no use.
That's right.
So I have to show up there tomorrow. It's my only chance. Anyway, it'll sure be a relief to have the whole thing settled, one way or another.
The case of Meade versus Meade. The husband, Bill, faces the trial with little hope. Kit Meade, the wife and Calvert's daughter, is lying in her luxurious bed, having retired early.
I don't know what I'm so worried about, really. It's practically certain that I'll win the case. I'll be free of Bill anyway. Once the divorce is over, I won't always have the feeling of having to stare my failure in the face every time I see Bill. But there's still the child. I'm stuck with him. Dad's lawyer says they'll award him to me. If only I hadn't been such a fool. When I look back on it, all the trouble I went to get possession of that child, for what? Now I wind up strapped with an infant that isn't even mine, a child I don't want but have to keep. Surely Bill will have sense enough to give up. He won't try to get the baby after the thing's settled tomorrow. Yet, that night I went to his place, he kept saying he'd fight. Surely he'll give up the idea after tomorrow. He must.
Kit Meade, troubled and uneasy as she faces tomorrow, knowing she trapped herself when she took Lisa Fenner's child, hoping to escape that trap somehow. Meade versus Meade. In Jessie Calvert's room down the hall from Kit, Jessie is lying stretched on the daybed, while her husband, Kit's father, paces restlessly.
I'm glad she got to bed early. She was worn out. She'll certainly need her strength tomorrow.
Oh, I don't know why you're making such a fuss, Ben. My goodness, it's just a simple little divorce trial. And an open and shut case at that.
You're always so calm, Jessie, about other people's difficulties. If this were something that involved you personally, you'd be all over the place.
I'd say it does involve me personally.
You're just jealous of Kit's being in this house. You always have been. You were determined to have it all to yourself after you tricked me into marrying you.
Well, perhaps I was, then. Women usually do prefer to be mistresses of their own homes, without interference.
Interference? From my own daughter? Really, Jessie?
Oh, Ben, don't give me this my own daughter business. If you haven't insight enough to know that precious daughter of yours doesn't give a snap about you, except what you can do for her.
That's not so. There's always been a strong bond between Kit and me, and especially since she came home. I'll admit she's been upset, not herself.
On the contrary, the Kit we've been seeing is closer to the real one than you realize.
Nonsense. Don't be such a cat, Jessie. This divorce thing has been difficult for all of us. But it'll be over tomorrow.
Yes, and then you can settle down here with your daughter and your grandson. Be the king of the roost. That's what you're planning, isn't it?
Why shouldn't I?
Oh, how can you be so sure of yourself?
I have good reason to be. If you'll notice, Jessie, I usually get what I want.
And regardless of what means you have to use, too. If it's necessary to walk all over people in the process, that doesn't bother you a bit, does it? No, you plow straight ahead in your heavy-footed way. Change your will, anything.
Wait a minute, Jessie. What's that about changing my will?
Well, that's what you did, isn't it?
Yes. I changed my will. I don't see that it's any business of yours.
Not my business. Well, after all, Ben, I am your wife.
Yes, you are, legally.
What do you mean by that?
I think you recall how our marriage came about. The threat you made to force me to marry you. I've given you no basis for complaint, have I? I support you, pay your bills.
Yes, you have so far.
If anything happened to me, you'd have enough to take care of yourself adequately. What more do you want?
When I think of the years I spent working for you, Ben, living for you, thinking only of you. When I think of the treatment you gave me, especially toward the end, the way you tried to put me out of your life because of your daughter. You had to live your life a different way, you said, because sweet, innocent little Kit had come home from school. She had to be protected from the ugly facts of life.
Look, Jessie, I don't see where all this is leading to. We've been over it 100 times.
And now it's Kit again. Kit and her child. Kit who doesn't give a hang about you. I loved you once, Ben.
Well, if you did, there doesn't seem to be much of it left now.
Well, perhaps that's because I've learned how useless it is. How little it means to you. Now that you have a grandson, an heir, nothing else means anything to you.
Why do you keep harping on that, on the baby? How can you be so hard, Jessie? Even after knowing you so long, it shocks me. To be jealous of an innocent little child.
Oh, Ben.
I know how much you'd like to see Kit leave, take the baby with her. But you'll never see that happen, Jessie.
You're forgetting something, Ben. It isn't absolutely certain that baby will be awarded to Kit.
It's about as certain as anything can be. Farnsworth knows what he's doing. He said there wasn't a chance in 100 that Bill Meade would get custody of that child.
Well, granted, he may think so. But there's still a chance. Judge Willoughby might take it into his head to give the child to Bill anyway. Don't be so sure of yourself, Ben. Remember, pride goeth before a fall.
I have a good memory, Jessie. I remember some things you'd rather have me forget, too.
Such as?
The fact that you've opposed me in every single thing I've wanted to do. Fought with Kit. And now you're fighting against Kit's child. Well, it won't do you any good, Jessie. Kit's going to have that child. And my grandson is going to grow up here in this house with me.
Although in her heart, Jessie acknowledged that Ben was right. The child would go to Kit. Still, she hadn't given up. She had an idea about California. Kit had been so mysterious about everything that happened while she was away. And Jessie was thinking of a letter she'd mailed the day before. A letter to a firm of private investigators in Los Angeles. Bill Meade didn't know it, but Jessie Calvert was doing her best to help him win custody of the child he believed to be his own. Custody which must be granted one way or another tomorrow, in the case listed on Judge Willoughby's calendar as the case of Meade versus Meade. Now for our story. In her apartment over the nightclub, Dell Shipley and Lisa Fenner sat talking. Outside, the city of Chicago was hushed, awaiting the dawn. The city seemed closed in upon itself, secret, withdrawn. And in Dell's apartment, the same mood emanated from Lisa Fenner. Remembering Aunt Mary's concern for the dancer, her feeling that Lisa needed to confide in someone, Dell had attempted to draw Lisa out. Finally, Lisa had said,
Dell, you'll promise to keep my secret, not to tell a single person.
Yeah, Lisa. I promise.
It's so hard. I've had this locked up inside of me for such a long time. Ever since San Francisco, that's where it began. Lance and I were doing a spot at the Regency room there.
Yeah, I know the place. Nice.
It was just about the best engagement we'd ever had. We'd been going up gradually, making more money, getting more publicity. But the farther we got, the farther apart we seemed to be getting, too. You see, the success had sort of gone to Lance's head.
Too bad. But it happens so many times. People get so they begin to believe everything their press agents say about them.
Well, Lance began going around with a lot of these wealthy women. They flattered him, and I didn't behave very well, I'm afraid. I was hurt and jealous, and I showed it. We began to quarrel. Then I met a man. His name was Paul. He was nice to me, and I was grateful. I felt so lonely, with Lance away most of the time. Paul said he was in love with me.
Well, was he?
Oh, I don't know. I thought so then, but the way things turned out later...
The old runaround.
That was just about it. Well, finally, Lance just left. Walked out.
Mm-hmm. So far, the story sounds pretty familiar. Let's just say most men are dopes.
I don't know. I certainly made a lot of mistakes myself afterwards. I left San Francisco after Lance walked out on me. I couldn't stay there. This man, Paul, had gone to Southern California. He asked me to visit him before. I told him no. But then, well, it seemed like a haven. The idea of going to someone who said he loved me.
Sure it did.
I was frightened. I suppose I should have told Lance, but I didn't. You see, I'd found out I was going to have a child. I didn't know what to do. Anyway, I went to Paul. He was very kind at first.
Yeah, I suppose he was. They generally are.
Then a friend of his, a girl he'd known before in New York, took a place next to Paul. She was married, but... Well, that's part of the story, too. I didn't know it then, but she and her husband had separated. Anyway, they weren't getting along. That was why she came to California, you see. She was going to have a baby, too.
Oh, brother.
Yeah. She was very nice to me. Asked me to stay with her.
I get it. And I have an awful feeling that I know the rest of the story. She and Paul began to get cozy again.
I didn't realize it at first.
You wouldn't.
Then I began to wonder. Little things. You know how it is, Dell. You think you're imagining things, but gradually it begins to grow in your mind. You try not to believe it.
Oh, you poor kid. Were you in love with this Paul?
Oh, I guess I thought so. The main thing was he represented a sort of security to me. One person to believe in after I'd felt so alone.
Yeah, sort of a rebound.
But when I think back, I realize it was Lance all the time.
What sort of person was this other babe? The one you were living with?
Well, it's hard to describe her. She was very sophisticated, had lots of money, and she was much more clever than I am. She had a way of making things look one way when they really weren't like that at all. But I believed her then. I was even ashamed of myself for doubting her.
And all the time she was cutting your throat.
Well, then something terrible happened. We quarreled one night, this girl and I.
About Paul?
Yes. I accused her of being in love with him. She got very upset. It was raining that night. She started out to get Paul. That's what she said afterwards. Wanted him to tell me it wasn't so. There were steep stairs leading to the road. She tripped. Fell to the bottom. She was lying there in the rain. I'll never forget it. We called the doctor, of course. But there was nothing he could do to save her child.
How did she... Was she all right?
Yes. She recovered. But she never forgave me. It was my fault she lost her child.
What do you mean? It was an accident.
But don't you see, Dell? She wouldn't have gone out that night if it hadn't been for me.
So that's the story. You think you were responsible.
Oh, I was, and for a lot more. Because after she lost her child, she told me about her husband, that her marriage was breaking up, and the child would have made it all right, brought them together again.
You can't be sure of things like that. He's only hoping it would. Nobody can say what's going to happen.
Oh, perhaps not. I don't know, but that's what she said. And I believed her. She said now that she didn't have a child, her marriage would fail. So she told me she decided she wanted Paul.
She sounds pretty cold-blooded.
She told me Paul was in love with her, and it wasn't her fault. There was nothing she could do.
And so you would have stepped nicely out of the picture. Leave them to live happily ever after.
She gave me an alternative.
Oh?
It was a bargain we made. Oh, if I'd only realized that. If I hadn't been so frightened and confused. But I was desperate, Dell. I didn't know what to do. And she made it all sound so sensible, so reasonable. As if there was nothing else for me to do but to promise her.
Promise her what, Lisa?
Oh, I just wanted to get it over with. So that she'd go away, so that I could forget. She went away. Went home. I didn't know it then, but she and Paul had arranged something between them. He told me about it later, when we were in Chicago. After she broke her promise to him.
She wasn't on the level with him either?
No. That's why he told me. She'd promised to marry him if he'd help her get what she wanted from me.
And did he?
Yes. But she broke her word anyway. That's when he came and told me the truth. Paul said he'd never loved me. He just pretended to for her sake. And she never intended to marry him. She only wanted to use him for her own purpose. After Paul told me the truth, I saw him for what he was. I realized I hadn't really loved him. I wanted to undo what I'd done. But there was no way. There isn't any way back for me. That's why I can't go back to life. Because of the crime.
Crime?
Yes, Dell. Wouldn't you call it a crime to give away your child?
Give away? Oh, Lisa.
That's what I did, Dell. I gave my child to her. I gave away my baby son.
Dell Shipley was shocked by Lisa's confession. But she had no idea of the connection Lisa's story had with Kit Meade, with Aunt Mary and her niece Peggy Douglas. But if you go to Wakefield, Dell, you may understand the significance of what Lisa Fenner has told you. And yet I wonder how much good you can do in straightening out these tangled lives, since you promised Lisa Fenner that you would keep secret what she has told you. And now for our story. Billy Peterson was a boy with a purpose today as he walked down a quiet street in Wakefield. Of course, occasionally he'd make a little detour into a vacant lot to pick up a pebble, talk to a stray cat, or perhaps to investigate the possibilities of an old apple box with an eye to future carpentry work. Billy was only 10 years old, and it is understandable that he should get sidetracked occasionally from whatever project was underway. But most of the time, as Billy walked along this morning, he was thinking about a friend of his, the one he was on his way to visit. This friend was Bill Meade, and Billy was sort of worried about him. Lately, Bill had been pretty unhappy, Billy could tell. And he knew why, too. It's on account of his kid. Only a baby, but a kid just the same. The trouble was, Bill and the kid's mother didn't get along, and the kid lived with her, so Bill didn't get to see him much, which was no good. That was why Billy had decided to pay Bill Meade a visit this morning. He figured he might be able to help Bill snap out of it. Well, anyway, he'd do his best. Whistling cheerfully, Billy went up the shallow steps of Bill's little house in the Wakefield Auto Court.
Why, Billy. Hello, fella.
Hi, Bill.
Oh, come on in.
Okay.
Hey, this is swell. I'm glad to see you.
You're all dressed up. You going somewhere?
Yeah. Oh, but not right away. We'll have time to talk a while.
Fine.
Yeah. Hey, you hungry, Billy? I've got some chocolate cake.
No, thank you. I just had breakfast not long ago.
You sure now? There's plenty.
Well, maybe you will have some.
Okay. I had a hunch you'd change your mind. Well, Billy, how's the world been treating you lately?
Pretty good. How about you?
Oh, so. Yeah. Here you are.
Thanks. I was thinking about you this morning. That's why I decided to drop around.
Oh.
Yeah. I was wondering about your kid. How's he getting along? Seen him lately?
No, I haven't.
That's too bad.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing's going to be settled soon, one way or the other.
It is?
Yeah, you remember we talked about it before? About why he doesn't live with me?
Sure. I remember all about it. You and your kid's mother don't click, so he lives with her.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, what do you mean, it might be settled? You mean he's coming to live with you, maybe?
He might.
Say, that's terrific. When's he coming?
Well, it isn't sure that he'll come, Billy. It's just a long shot.
Oh.
Now, that's where I'm going this morning to find out about it.
You mean you're going to see his mother and get her to let him come here to live?
Oh, no, it's not quite like that. Well, that is, I am going to see his mother, but... Well, it's kind of hard to explain, Billy. Did you ever hear anything about a divorce? Do you know what that means?
Sure. My aunt got divorced once. My mom's sister. Her husband, well, he was no good. He did awful mean things, so they got a divorce. He's getting along swell now.
Yeah, well, that's good. Well, that's what I'm going to do this morning.
You going to get a divorce? Where are you going to get it, Bill?
I have to go over to Stanton.
Oh. Well, gosh, I don't know. My aunt's kids, my cousins, well, they live with her since she and her husband split up.
Yeah. That's the way it usually goes. The children stay with their mother.
Well, gee, Bill, I hope your kid don't have to. I hope you could bring him here.
Yeah, so do I.
We could have a lot of fun, couldn't we? I'd make him things and stuff. And you know what, Bill?
What?
I could stay with him sometimes when you had to go away.
Oh, that's swell of you, Billy. But I've got a lady who'd take care of him if he comes to live with me. We'd better not let our hopes get too high, though, because you never can tell. And it's worse if you count on something and then it doesn't happen.
Boy, I'll say it is. That's what happened to me last Christmas. I wanted a bike.
And you didn't get one?
No, I got a pair of skates instead.
Oh, well, that's a shame, Billy.
But my dad says maybe I can get one for my birthday.
Oh, I hope you do.
Bill,
What's the matter? What are you looking at?
I see that chip I made your kid up on the mantel.
Well, you see, Billy, I haven't seen him since then, so I didn't get to give it to him. But he's going to have it. And besides, if he does come to live with me, it'll be here already, waiting for him.
That's right, it will. Gosh, Bill, I sure do hope it works out for you today. Will you let me know?
I sure will, fella.
I'll be thinking about it all day.
Oh, that's swell of you, Billy. But I wish you'd just go and have a good time. I don't want you to be worrying about my troubles. You'll have plenty of time to think about these things after you grow up. Now you ought to be having a good time.
I do have a good time, Bill. But a guy can't help wanting his friends to be okay, too.
Oh, sure. And I do appreciate... Oh, well, that's my lawyer. He's going to drive me over to Stanton. Well, I hate to go, fella, but I'm afraid I have to.
Oh, well, that's all right, Bill. Well, I'll keep my fingers crossed.
Thanks. I need moral support. Well, come on, Billy. Why don't you see me off?
Okay. Say, I've seen that red-headed guy around town. Is he your lawyer?
Yeah, that's Angus McKillop.
Looks to me like a character. Hope he can do you some good.
Well, don't go by his looks. Well, so long, Billy. Thanks for dropping around.
Okay, so long, Bill. I'll be seeing you.
Okay, Billy.
Gosh, poor Bill. I wish there was something I could do.
Billy walked home slowly. But this time he didn't make detours. He was too busy thinking. The rest of that day seemed weeks long to the youngster. He couldn't get started at anything. Tried to work in the little shop his dad had fixed up for him in the tool shed, but he couldn't get going somehow. Finally, about 4 o'clock, he decided to go back to Bill's house and wait for him, find out what happened. When he got there, he sat down disconsolately on the bottom step. About 20 minutes later, a car pulled up, and Bill got out and came toward him.
Hello, Bill.
Billy. Hey, don't tell me you've been here all day waiting.
No, I went home for a while, but I couldn't seem to stay put. Nothing went right, so I finally gave up.
Well, Billy, we lost.
Yeah, I thought so. I saw it in your face.
Oh, well, look, pal, I don't want you to get down in the dumps, too. That won't do any good.
I know. That's what my mom always says.
Yeah, well, she's right. And besides, fella, it isn't completely settled.
But if you're lost, what do you mean?
Well, my lawyer's gonna see if there's something else he can do. But in the meanwhile, I still can't see my kid.
Gosh, that's tough, Bill.
Yeah. Oh, well, don't feel too bad. Could be worse. At least I'm not married anymore.
Yeah?
Yeah, the divorce went through.
Well, I'm glad, if that's what you wanted.
Well, it isn't exactly what I wanted, but it'll be better this way.
Will it?
Oh, I feel like an awful heel telling you all this. You shouldn't be thinking about such things at your age.
Shucks, Bill. Don't feel that way. I'm no baby, you know. I'm 10 years old. They don't hurt me. The more I know, the better. I'm going to be growing up myself someday.
Well, Billy, when you are, I just hope you don't make the mistake I've made.
Bill looked into the youngster's face. 10 years old. In another 10 years, Bill's own child would be that age, thinking in terms of grown-up problems, capable of friendship and loyalty. What would he be like if he were brought up by Ben Calvert? Still, there was a chance, just a slim hope, that Angus might be able to work the miracle somehow, to get the judge to set aside his decision of this morning, which had denied Bill his boy.